Hello, today we're going to learn how to divide decimals. However, today's problems are going to be a little bit more challenging. You are about to discover what to do instead of writing remainder this if you have a problem with a remainder. Welcome to the world of no remainders. In this problem here, you have 2 and 4/10 divided by 5. I'm first going to look at my divisor, and I see that I have the number 5. There's no decimal involved, so I can simply begin my long division. Now, in this video, I will be doing long division, but you can choose to use whatever method you would like to divide each problem. So now, even though I see a decimal in my dividend, that's just telling me I'm going to have a decimal in my quotient. So I can put that up here, or I can wait till the end of the problem. So now I'm going to simply start my long division. 5 times 0 is 0, which gets me close to or exactly to 2. I'm going to subtract and I have 2. Now I'm going to bring down my 4. 5 times 4 is 20, which gets me close to or exactly to 24. I'm going to subtract and I'm left with 4. Now I see that I have a remainder 4, but I'm not going to say my answer is 4/10 remainder 4. Instead, I'm going to do something new, and doing this is going to help me potentially eliminate that remainder. So now what I'm going to look at is I have 2 and 4/10. And we know that 2 and 4/10 is the same as 2 and 40/100. And we know that 2 and 40/100 is the same as 2 and 400,000, and so on. In fact, I can add an infinite amount of zeros after that decimal point. Now, we don't like to represent our number with this many zeros at the end because, in fact, it can go on and on forever. So we don't need to ever write my number like this. However, for the purpose of this problem, I can simply add a 0 at the end here, and it changing 2 and 4/10 to 2 and 40/100. So now I can see if I can potentially get rid of that remainder. So now I'm going to bring down this 0, and I'm looking for 5 times something gets me closer exactly to 40. So now I know that 5 times 8 is 40, and now I have no remainder. And that's my goal. If I did have a remainder here, I could continue adding zeros at the end of this number here, changing 2 and 4/10 to maybe 2 and 400,000. But because I now have an answer with no remainder, I'm going to show that I am finished with this problem, and I'm going to look at my quotient. Now I have 48/100 as my answer. And notice I look at my decimal point in my dividend, and I simply bring it right above into my quotient, showing that my decimal is between my ones place and my tenths place. And now my answer here is simply 48/100. Now let's take a look at this problem here. We have 13/100 divided by 2. I'm going to first look at my divisor, and I notice that I have a whole number divisor, which is telling me I do not need to do anything. I don't have to multiply by 10. I don't have to eliminate any decimal in my divisor. I can simply start dividing. So if I'm going to start with my long division here, I'm going to start doing my division here, bringing down my 1. Now notice I'm simply doing long division. These are steps that we've been working on for a very long time. So please recall some of this prior knowledge of doing long division. I'm going to bring down my 3. Now I have 13. 2 times 6 is 12. But again, now I see that I have a remainder. Instead of writing a remainder of 1, I'm going to see, can I do something else to this problem? I'm going to look at 13/100, and I know I can represent 13/100 as 130,000. So this is showing me that 13/100 is equivalent to 130,000. Now, just like I said in the previous problem, we don't always need to include these extra zeros at the end. However, for the purpose of these problems, when we're dividing decimals, we can potentially eliminate that remainder and continue on with the problem if we were to add these extra zeros. So now I'm going to continue my long division problem, bringing down the zero, and I see that 2 times 5 is 10. And now, in fact, I have no remainder, and that's the goal. Now I'm left with no remainder at all. But now I see this quotient, and I notice I did not put my decimal point yet in my quotient. So I need to look at my dividend. I see that my decimal points between 0 and 1, which are the digits in my ones place and my tenths place. So I'm simply going to bring it right up to my quotient. Notice now it's between my ones place and my tenths place as well, giving me a final answer of 65 thousandths as my answer. Now for this next one here, just like the others, I have a whole number divisor, so I do not need to do anything, move a decimal point or anything. I can simply start my division. So 3 times 1 gets me closer exactly to 5. I'm going to subtract, bring down my 4. 3 times 8 is 24. And I subtract, and I'm left with 0. Now notice here I have no remainder. So unlike the other problems, I don't need to add any extra zeros. I don't have to continue on. In fact, I can claim that now I'm finished with this problem. However, my answer is not 18. I need to look at my dividend. I see that I have 5 and 4/10. Notice where my decimal point is placed, and I'm simply going to bring it right up to my quotient, showing me that I have a quotient of 1 and 8/10. Notice it's very important that you include your decimal point in your final answer. It is always important to go back and look to see. And notice here I have no remainder at all. Your goal now for all of these problems is to have no remainder. Now let's take a look at this problem. I have 9 and 7/10 divided by 10. So I look at my divisor. I see that there's a whole number again. So I can simply start doing my long division. So now I'm going to look here, and I see that I'm starting my long division. And now I'm deciding 10 times something gets me closer exactly to 97. So 10 times 9 is 90. But instead of saying my remainder of 7, I know that 9 and 7/10 is also equivalent to 9 and 70/100. So let's write 9 and 70/100 as my dividend instead. Notice I'm extending this bar a little bit to help me. So now I rewrote 9 and 7/10 as my dividend to 9 and 70/100. So now I'm going to see, let's see if I can eliminate that remainder. So I'm going to bring down my 0. And now I have 10 times 7 gets me to exactly 70. And now I'm left with no remainder, which is telling me I'm finished with this problem. However, I see that I'm dividing decimals. So I need to look at my dividend, and I notice I still have a decimal point here. So I need to include this in my quotient, giving me a quotient of 97/100. And that is the answer to this problem. For all of these problems today, some will include remainders, and you need to do this extra step to try to eliminate that remainder. We no longer need to write our problems as remainder 2, remainder 5. We want to continue solving that problem to see if there's another way we can represent our answer in a better form, in a more exact form. So today these are challenging problems. Some you will have to go this extra step, some you will not. So it is important to rewrite these problems in your notebook, and feel free to refer back to this video at any time on my YouTube channel.